West Ham, no doubt a complete mess on the field, seemingly a complete mess off it, as well as fans have taken it upon themselves to boycott games in protest at the board and the stadium. But are they right to be doing it? Are they something of a sleeping giant? Should they expect more than a relegation battle season in and season out? Bear in mind, they won a European trophy just a couple of seasons ago. Are they right to expect that more often? And Ray, when I look at West Ham, I know people will say, oh, the fans have got a sense of entitlement. But I'll tell you what, they turn up in their droves. They have the second biggest average Premier League crowd. Only Manchester United average more than them. So, you know, they pay their money, second biggest average crowd. They're right to expect more, aren't they?
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, they pay their good money as well to get into the stadium, and they just expect that little bit of desire from the players, whether, you know, Nuno can get that out of them. He'll have to work very hard to do that, but that's all they really, you know, someone who's really going to run through a brick wall to wear the shirt, and that's what West Ham fans need. As I said before, I think it's certainly a sleeping giant. I mean, it was great that they won the European the other day, the conference. It's last season or a couple of seasons ago. That was massive for the club. And they accept to move on from that. So I think the recruitment hasn't been great. They've lost key players as well. And they've not really replaced them. So there's a lot of hard work to do now behind the scenes. And I don't know how you... Well, the only way you get the West Ham fans back on your side is results. And at the moment, they're desperate for a result. Whether they can get it this Friday against Leeds, we'll have to wait and see. And they've got 2 home games again. There's going to be a lot of empty seats at those 2 home games against Burnley and Newcastle. So it's a real mess at the moment. And Nuno probably didn't realise what he's getting himself into. I know it's a very good job, and it's sometimes hard to turn West Ham down, but now he knows he's really up against it, and it's going to be difficult for him.
Yeah. Obviously, the board come in for a lot of stick. We mentioned the numbers that come through the gates there. And one thing that puzzles many people, me included, is the fact that not only is the recruitment really, really poor, but they constantly seem to be pleading poverty, if you like, you know, that they can't compete with the bigger sides. And yet Forbes ranked them in a survey at the beginning of this year, ranked them the world's 18th most valuable football team.
Absolutely.
The world's 18th most
You've got to
valuable
invest.
football
You've got to invest in the team. We've seen that probably at my old club, Arsenal. You know, you've seen Liverpool go out, and you need to look. Recruitment's so important. You've got to get the right players in, and sometimes you might have to pay over the odds a little bit to get the right players, but you need to get better players. And at the moment, it looks like what they rent the stadium out for, $2.5 million a year, which is nothing really. I mean, when you look at that, but there needs to be big improvement in the recruitment. I don't know who's picking the players. I don't know who's looking into how to buy players. And they've got to spend more money. They really have. If you're going to compete, you know, and you don't always have to spend big money. You can just make sure you get the right player with the character and all that sort of stuff who can help the team.
They're a great example of that.
Absolutely.
We've got Brighton. The goalkeeper, you know, Kelleher. They brought Kelleher in, whereas West Ham changed their goalkeeper. They brought in Ouattara from Bournemouth. They brought in Thiago. Now, any of those players, they would walk into that West Ham.
Absolutely.
Now.
And when you look at Brighton, they lost all their big players over the years, and they've always seemed to recruit very, very well. They've always had a plan to say, if we do lose our big players, we're going to have option 1, 2, 3, and it's worked. You can argue Brentford, Bournemouth. Bournemouth lost half of their back 4. 3 of the back 4 in the summer.
Some very foolish pundits suggested that they would be in the bottom 3.
Amazing job he's doing. So look, if those teams can do it, why can't West Ham? Because West Ham have got, you know, what sort of gate does Bournemouth get every week?
Yeah.
You know, they're getting 12, 13, 14,000 people. West Ham are getting 60. So where's that money revenue going? I really don't get where there should be more spending from West Ham to go out and buy better players. Look, you might have to sell players like Declan Rice at certain times of it because he wants to go to the next level and try and get that Champions League. But you've got to have plans to back it up and say, look, if we do lose him, we've got 105 million. We can invest that back into the squad, which you've got to do if you're going to be successful and try and be in that top half of the table, which at the moment they're miles off it. They're miles off it.
I mean, the underlying factor for all West Ham fans, you mentioned it, it's the stadium. From that incredible atmosphere down
Upton
at
Park.
Upton Park, absolutely amazing, to a stadium designed for the Olympics Games, for athletics, if you like, outside a shopping centre. And the Hammers fans have never taken to it. And it seems like enough is enough. Former striker Tony Cottee slammed the non-football stadium yesterday morning.
West Ham are the only club to move from a football stadium to an athletic stadium.
Yeah.
And I'm not for 1 minute saying that the stadium is not fantastic. It is an unbelievable stadium. You walk in there and you go, wow. But it's only really wow for athletics, for monster trucks, for a pop concert, for rugby, for baseball, pretty much everything except football.
And I get that point.
Yeah.
But in a way, there's no turning back, is there? They've got the stadium now.
Where do they go with, around the area, the land? Where are you going to build the stadium? You've got to try and maybe, I don't know if they can ever buy that stadium and make it like a Man City and make it more of a football stadium. I don't know. But Upton Park, as you rightly mentioned, that was a fortress. I mean, really, really tough. And it looks like the London Stadium's pretty easy for the away players to go there and make it, no problem. Long way away from the pitch, the supporters. I remember Upton Park, they could tap you on the shoulder if you're taking a throw in. That's how close they were. I know they winded it out a little bit towards the end when they left, but that was a real hard place to play. And no away team like going there. But it seems like they don't mind going to the London Stadium, which is a little bit like Arsenal when we played at Wembley for the Champions League games. It suited the away team more than our team because we're playing away from home as well. And that's that big advantage you're losing by moving stadiums. And it looks like West Ham have lost a massive advantage now by moving stadiums. But I don't know where they go with it. I really don't. You've either got to get your head around it and say, we've just got to continue. What else can they do? I don't know. It's a really...
I mean, it was a fearsome place to go, but I think it's worth saying that regardless of where they've been playing their football over the years... Look, we heard from Tony Cottee there. Of course, he was part of the West Ham team that finished third in 1986. I mean, great memories for West Ham fans of the likes of McAvenny in the side, and Alan Devonshire and Alan Dickens, Phil Parks, Alvin Martin, Ray Stewart,
Frank Lampard.
Yeah, great memories. But the point I'm making is that was 1986, and since then, it's effectively been, with the exception maybe of 1999, they finished fifth. It's been 40 years of comparative failure, regardless of where they've been playing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that comes down to maybe the recruitment. What people would always... You could argue that, because it's a London club, you're going to get the better players coming into London. Not necessarily, because, you've got Manchester United, Man City now up north, and Liverpool's, and, players want to play for those sort of sides as well. But it certainly gives you a little bit of advantage. If you're not getting the top players, you can get the mediocre ones or the ones who are going to make your team better.
They've got too many mediocre ones now, Ray.
Absolutely. And, it's a shame to see because the club last night, I mean, West Ham would always keep behind their team, but it looks like they're really losing faith with it all now, and it's not nice to see those empty seats. I'm sure the players, it doesn't help the players seeing those empty seats either, because they're looking around and the toxic atmosphere, it's not helping. So I don't know where to go with it. Look, they've got a problem with the board as well and the owners, but they've still got to support their team, because if they don't, the supporters, then they're going to have a massive problem, and they could be in the Championship next year, which would be a nightmare for the club.
Well, West Ham fans, we talk about the ground, but West Ham fans obviously making their feelings, as they have done for a long time, making their feelings felt about the owners, claiming that the owners simply don't care. Vice Chair Karen Brady joined talkSPORT earlier in the season and argued this is not the case.
I don't think people really understand. I mean, a lot of people, they look at club directors and they think we're quite remote, or they think we don't care in the way that supporters care. Trust me, we care. Yesterday hurt us as much as it hurt them. We're always thinking about what can we do every day to make the club better. All we want to do is fulfill all our hopes and dreams and expectations our supporters have. We're all supporters of the club. We're thinking all the time, what do we need to do? How do we need to do it? How can we improve? And when you don't get the results that you want, you're thinking about it even harder. And there is a pressure associated with that, but football's only just begun. There's a long way to go. So we still have that expectation. We know this is a good squad. It has a quality about it. And for whatever reason yesterday it didn't click, but it hurts us just as much as it hurts everybody else. But it's our job to go and fix it.
I think they have to look at what they're doing then.
Well, exactly.
Go the opposite way.
If they are so committed, success is never guaranteed for any football club. But if they are so committed and they are looking at things every day to try and see how they can improve matters, they're getting it horribly wrong.
They are,
aren't they?
and they've got to do something about that. Whether who's buying the players, recruitment, and all that sort of stuff. Recruitment, we've known over the years. I mean, Liverpool have done brilliant at that. Manchester United had their problems recruiting that didn't seem to work. It is so important that you really put your homework into watching players week in, week out. I wouldn't go by stats, because some clubs go by stats and say, look at his stats are unbelievable. But you've got to see a player in the flesh and look at their attitude, look at their characters. And they don't have to be the best players in the world, some players. It's about their work rate and it's about what they get out of the other players around them. And that's so important. It doesn't look like... They look like they feel sorry for themselves and, it's all going wrong, there's empty seats. And they've got to sort it out themselves as players as well. You can't always look at the manager. You've got to say, roll your sleeves up. You need people like Mark Noble now in your dressing room, who's an absolute West Ham legend, to say, come on, you sort yourself out, and have a go at each other. And that can maybe spark something. But at the moment, it was too easy last night. They rolled over when they're in a relegation battle. They know all the cameras are on them. Everybody's watching it on a Monday night to see how they bounce back, West Ham. And it was absolutely awful performance. So... the players have got to look at themselves as well and say, look, when I wear this West Ham shirt, I'm going to give everything I've got. Look, don't get me wrong, there's a couple of players who probably do that, but there's not enough players who do it. And if four of you don't turn up in any sort of game, you're going to lose. And that's why there's shocks in FA Cups. When you don't get the right attitude, especially when you start, and maybe they're looking at the stadium thinking, oh, no one's turned up, and there's boycotts and all things going through the players' heads. But as soon as that whistle goes, you've got to give it everything you've got to try and get 3 points for West Ham United, which they're not doing at the moment.
Should the fans continue to protest?
It's going to be a problem if there's going to be empty seats, because the players, it definitely affects the players. There's no doubt about that. And as much as you should be professional when you go out there, you want a packed stadium. You want you want to feel wanted. You want to get the fans behind you, and they could be the extra player on that pitch. So it will affect them. But look, West Ham fans are very, very much really adamant that the club are not doing enough to push him into the top half, and the players they're buying are not good enough, and all that sort of stuff. So it'd be interesting to see the next home game. It really will be. I think, is it Hull or Newcastle? One of not a Hull, so a Burnley or Newcastle. But
Hull might be next season.
Well, there's a long way still to go, and they can quickly turn it around if they can get a couple of results. And we know it's a competitive league anyway, but at the moment it's dire, and it'd be interesting to see what's happening at West Ham training ground this morning, because the players will be disappointed with the performance. But how do they turn it around? It's down to the players to turn it around, and the manager, and it'd be interesting to see if they can do that.